Season 5 of Rick and Morty is back, y'all. And is it just me, or did the premiere episode seem a little wonky to you? I was starting to write a regular breakdown vid, but the more I looked at every detail, the more I started theorizing that this episode might not feature Rick and Morty C-137. You're watching WhitneyVision, and this is my theory on why I think Mort Dinner Rick Andre takes place outside the main timeline. Before we get started, I want to tell you guys about our Patreon. We just sent out our first round of stickers for our $5 tier, folks, so if you want in on the action, check out the link below. This is your spoiler warning! If you haven't seen Season 5, Episode 1 yet, hit pause on your intergalactic cable remote and come back to this video when you're caught up. It's a pretty common theory in the Rick and Morty fandom that some episodes we see take place away from the main C-137 timeline. Because of the canonical multiverse that exists within the series, and because there are so many different iterations of Rick and Morty, many fans believe that certain episodes of this show are actually about another one of the versions of the two. And for me, this is one of those episodes. If you want to hear more about some other episodes that might exist off the main timeline, check out the Cartoons That Curse podcast. My man Cello's also recently put out a really good Evil Morty theory that you guys will definitely enjoy, so give his channel some love when you finish this video. Let's start with our first clue: the crystals that surround Rick and Morty as they're chased by that giant space monster. At first glance, I thought that they were on Forbodulon Prime, and that those were death crystals. But on closer rewatch, none of these scenes show the kind of gruesome death scenes that the other crystals produced. Also, death crystals are light blue, while these bad girls are glowing in bisexual lighting, and they project the images onto the crystals themselves. If you recall from Edge of Tomorty, Rick Die Rick Pete, Rick and Morty had to be physically touching the death crystals to see their potential death outcomes, while these crystals are able to produce these images while Rick and Morty are on that planet. And I know that at this point you're like, shut up Whitney, this just proves that they're on a different planet with different crystals, not in a different timeline. But hang on, hear me out, I promise I'll get there. Let's take a closer look at the contents of some of these crystals. We have Morty holding baby Rick, Rick and Morty clinging to one another and screaming, Lego Rick and Morty, what looks like Slick Morty wearing aviators and a leather jacket over his yellow tank top, Bird Rick and Morty fighting over a worm, Blade Rick and Morty, Lumberjack Rick and Tree Morty, Rick showing a part to Morty in his lab, Rick fighting something with a fire cannon, Rick's veiny face about to explode, one where Morty is pinning a crying Rick to the floor while Summer forces him to listen to her iPod, and one where they're British soldiers. Most interesting to me is that some of these shards are depicting events that we've already seen in the series. There's a shard that shows them rapping from M. Night Shyamalan's, one from Lawnmower Dog with Rick in his Coke Bomb vest, this piece where they're standing in the street naked also from M. Night Shyamalan's, this sequence of Rick driving Morty from Rick Potion number 9, and this scene where they fly past the wall of tortured Mortys in close Rick counters of the Rick kind. There's also a shard that depicts Doc and Marty, who as you may know are the Channel 101 pilot version of the pair. When Rick sees the crystal featuring him and Morty in the Blade universe, he's like, were we Blades in that one? That's effing tight. Which leads me to believe that it's a scene from a timeline that this specific Rick and Morty did not experience. If they didn't experience the Blade timeline, I think it's possible that they also didn't experience some of the other timelines featured as well. Let's take the tortured Morty timeline for example. We know that Rick and Morty C-137 did go to the Council of Ricks after being arrested and forced to clear Rick's name against Evil Morty. So if this Rick and Morty didn't experience it, like they didn't experience the Blade timeline, that would make this an alternate pair of Rick and Mortys. The next thing I noticed was that Morty seems noticeably more confident in this episode, while Rick appears noticeably weaker. This could absolutely be just regular old character growth. After all, Season 4 was Rick's darkest storyline emotionally so far. At the end of the Season 4 finale, Beth and Clone Beth decided that they didn't need to know which one of them was the real Beth, which took power away from Rick. He then discovered that he's a terrible father, and that he mixed up the DNA samples so thoroughly that it would be impossible to know which one is which. And when he tries to start fixing Phoenix Person, that dude's still all jacked up and rejects him. Also, let's not ignore the fact that he's literally a grandpa and that people just slow down when they get older. All of that stuff is true, and I could be reading way too much into this. But what if this is a different variation of Rick and Morty? And in this variation, the Morty is stronger than the Rick. My first thought was immediately that this could be an Evil Morty origin story. Perhaps this is a look into the timeline where Morty began having to physically rescue Rick, started standing up to him, and eventually overpowered him. At the beginning of the episode, when Morty is talking to Jessica as their spaceship hurtles towards the Earth, she tells him that nervousness can be really selfish, which is when he decides to save him and his grandpa so that he can go on a date with her. I don't know about you, but that sounds like kind of a badass supervillain origin line to me. What if Evil Morty took that line to heart and used it to propel his confidence all the way to the top of the Council of Ricks? And if we're gonna talk Evil Morty, I have to say, he did slaughter multiple generations of Whovies family, including but not limited to everyone at that entire castle. Maybe this is where he got a taste for murder. Many fans on Reddit pointed out that they thought it was kinda weird that there was no mention of Clone Beth in this episode. However, Space Beth is mentioned in the trailer for the next episode, so we'll have to wait and see. My question is, where's Phoenix Person? Did Rick ever fix him? Or is this a timeline where Phoenix Person isn't a factor? Again, this might be totally off base, but what if this timeline's Rick's version of Phoenix Person is Mr. Nimbus instead? It's certainly not weird or out of character for Rick to hide important people from his family, but why haven't we heard of this guy before if he's one of Rick's oldest companions? Nobody said anything about facing a pansexual oceanic nemesis when they were portal gunning to Atlantis for mermaid puss. What if this timeline doesn't have a bird person / Phoenix Person as Rick's oldest friend, but rather this guy? Regardless of whether or not Mr. Nimbus is from the C-137 timeline, he does drop some interesting details about Rick's past. Not only does he mention Rick's late wife Diane by name, he also lets slip that Rick used to associate with someone named Kyle, and he specifically says, "I liked your last one better. What was his name? Kyle?" Implying that Rick had another sidekick before Morty came into the picture. We don't know much about Rick's life before he came back into Beth and her family's, but maybe Kyle was a pre-Morty type. When I first told this to Brett, I was like, what if it was a Morty variant named Kyle? And Brett was like, Whitney, you're stoned, there's not gonna be a Kyle Morty. But what if? There's a lizard Morty and a lawyer Morty out there. Who says there can't be a Kyle Morty? Although Mr. Nimbus, the absence of Phoenix Person, Morty's confidence, and Rick's decline can easily be explained within the C-137 universe, what's going on with these weird portals? Instead of using the usual green portal gun to travel back and forth between the wine dimension, Rick gives Morty a portal gun that shoots out a black-rimmed rectangular portal with another gold rectangle inside a purple galaxy. Could this portal gun be proof that they're in a different timeline? Even the other Ricks and Mortys at the Citadel use the green portals, so why do these guys have a unique one? To play devil's advocate of my theory, it's of course possible that this dimension is only reachable via this special portal gun, or that it's a backup that Rick made after Tammy almost got a hold of his in the season 4 finale. But we've never seen Rick use a special portal gun to travel to a specific place before, and even when they've lost previous portal guns, the replacements they've found or made have always been similar to the OG green ones. Why are they using this portal gun now? My last piece of evidence comes from one of the final scenes, where Whovies robot descendants rip out Rick's cybernetic body modifications. After swapping bodies with Quantum Rick at the Citadel in Season 3, it's possible that this is when he obtained all of the enhancements seen on this X-ray from the Whirly-Durly conspiracy. As you can see, Rick has cybernetic arms and legs, as well as equipment supporting his heart and a bionic eye. But in this scene, the only modifications that fly out are the gun in his arm and parts near his left shoulder, right side, and right upper thigh. There's also a modification that seems to fly out of his throat, which could be the parts surrounding his heart on the X-ray. But why didn't the robot bird blast out his other augmentations? What about the one in his eye, or all the other parts in his arms and legs? There also wasn't anything on the Whirly-Durly X-ray on his right torso, so what flew out of there? Could this be a different Rick with different cybernetic modifications? The final telling clue as to whether this is the C-137 universe or not lies with Jessica. Is she gonna come back as a time god in future episodes? If she does, then all of this probably happened within the C-137 universe. But if she appears normal when we watch future episodes, it might mean that time god Jessica only exists in this timeline. Dan Harmon did confirm that Morty will have a new love interest this season, so maybe Time God Jessica really is part of the main timeline. We'll have to wait and see what her behavior is like in future episodes to know if she's still affected by being trapped in eternity. I also wonder if it's possible for them to just mind blow her Jessica, or if that just won't work because they'd have to mind blow like 10,000 years out of her brain. Regardless, I think that Jessica will be the nail in the coffin for me as to whether or not this episode exists on the normal timeline. Like I've said a bazillion times, I could be wrong about all of this, but it's fun to speculate. Hit me with your theories about this episode in the comments below. Do you think it's possible that all of this happened in another timeline? Could it be an evil Morty origin story? Or do you think I'm reading way too much into this and it's all just part of the regular storyline and normal character progression? Let me know your thoughts on Mort Dinner Rick Andre, like and subscribe to our channel, and tell all your friends. I'm Scarlet Wit and you're watching WhitneyVision.